Right, hello everybody. Welcome again. Thank you for joining Healthy Places by Design's Socially Connected Communities webinar about cultivating community hubs for socially connected communities. Healthy Places by Design's webinars are a component of our Socially Connected Communities Network, which builds and supports a movement to advance action that results in more socially connected and equitable communities. I am Risa Wilkerson, Executive Director with Healthy Places by Design, and I am joined by my colleagues who will be providing support to maximize your webinar experience today. We have Joanne Lee, who is our Senior Project and Communications Director, with us today. She will help to facilitate the Q&A portion of today's webinar. And also Becky Snyderman, who is our Project and Events Manager and is serving as our chat monitor for the webinar, as well as providing Zoom platform and logistical support. Before moving into today's topic, let's review some logistical items intended to create an atmosphere that supports group learning and engagement. The chat box is a space where we can share and learn with each other, so please use that to add comments, reactions, as well as any links to related resources that you think could be helpful for others. Be sure that the setting in your chat box is to everyone when you're introducing yourself and sharing comments, but if you do need one-on-one logistical support, then direct your chat to Becky Snyderman. These participant chats are a great way to gauge how the webinar content is resonating. However, if you do find them distracting, you can close it and disable the chat notifications in Zoom. Another Zoom menu item we want to point out is the Q&A box. If you have a question for anyone who's presenting today, please put that in Q&A box, not in chat. It helps us to sort them, manage them, and better address your questions. We've also made closed captions in English available in this webinar, so feel free to turn on that feature if that's helpful to you. And yes, the webinar is being recorded, and yes, you will receive the recording and the slides from today's webinar. In fact, by joining today, you'll hear about them. We'll send them out to you soon after the webinar. Now let's begin exploring our topic today, cultivating community hubs for social connection. It's a popular one. We had a record number of registrations, so we are happy to have you here today. Community hubs are places where people of all backgrounds can gather to socialize, learn, and work together and develop trusting relationships. Community hubs make it easier to feel a sense of belonging. Often people think about community centers, parks, schools as community hubs, and they are, but there are many other community spaces and organizations who also serve that role, even those initiated for other reasons, libraries and YMCAs. Before we introduce our speakers, though, I'd like to hear from you about what's happening in your communities. So we're going to launch a poll. Becky will launch with this question. Does your community have a less traditional hub that promotes social connection? And that's a no answer. And if you did answer yes, please also answer the next question. Lets us know what is non-traditional hub. We'd love to hear that. We're going to keep this poll open a minute or two. We've found we need to give it a minute for folks to be able to respond. So please take your time, answer the question in the poll about what that particular community hub is. And also, if you haven't already, go ahead and introduce yourself and where you're from in chat. All right, we're getting quite a few answers coming in. Large percent of you are saying no, no non-traditional, less traditional hub that promotes social connection, but about a third of you are still saying yes. So we'll give this another 15 seconds or so for you to answer. Thank you for participating. It's always good to see what's going on with the folks who are here. Yeah, about a third are saying yes, and the rest are saying no. Thank you so much for participating in the poll. Appreciate that. All right. Great. One moment. All right, now it is my pleasure to introduce our guests. First, we have Lynn Crawford, who oversees the direction of membership growth, marketing initiatives, and leadership development across 7 YMCA branches that make up the YMCA of Greensboro, North Carolina. Lynn began her journey with the YMCA as a summer camp counselor, setting the foundation for a career marked by passion, service, and excellence. Over the years, she has embraced new challenges, consistently demonstrating strong leadership and an unwavering dedication to organizational success. Lynn has held various roles over her 23 years with the YMCA, encompassing membership services, wellness, member engagement, and team leadership. All sounds very social to me. Outside of her professional responsibilities, Lynn remains deeply committed to the Y's mission of fostering holistic community health and well-being. Welcome, Lynn. We also have with us Jamar Rahming, who has worked in the library industry for 20 years in 8 different states, including a fellowship at the Smithsonian Institution. He serves as the executive director of the Wilmington, Delaware Institute Free Library, an award-winning institution, including being recognized by Fodder's Travel as one of the most beautiful libraries in the nation. Under Jamar's leadership, the Wilmington Library has transformed into a thriving educational, cultural, and literacy center with strong community partnerships that are strengthening social bonds across the community. Jamar was celebrated by Library Journal and awarded the Movers and Shakers 2023 Community Builders Award for his innovative efforts in facilitating some of the most fascinating programs the library industry has ever seen. Most recently, Jamar was named 2024 CEO of the Year by Delaware Business Times and recipient of 2025 I Love My Librarian Award. That's the best award name I've heard in a while by the American Library Association. Welcome, Jamar. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with Lynn. Lynn, thank you for being here. Why do you think community hubs like the YMCA are essential today? And how has the YMCA of Greensboro evolved beyond fitness and recreation to become a true community connector?
Thanks for having me. So the YMCA has really always been a community hub. I'd hazard to guess that if we ask this group, almost everyone has some Y story. So a connection to the Y. They either took a program there growing up, or they worked there as a teenager, or they have a family member. Some connection to the Y. And so what we're doing isn't new, but we continue to kind of make it a focus of our organization. You know, the Y started as a place for people to gather in dark and dirty London. It was a gathering of young men who used it as a way to escape the seedy underbelly of the city during the Industrial Revolution. And it's continued that way as the movement, as we call it, has grown. So as an organization, we've always been a gathering place for those working to make change in their community. And the YMCA of Greensboro even was a place where the Greensboro Four met prior to their integration of the lunch counter at Woolworths. So we've always been kind of quietly or sometimes loudly in the back of innovations in our communities and society. There's a laundry list of items created by the Y. The most famous and important of all in March is basketball, of course. So I kind of believe that one of the best aspects of the Y is the fact that it brings together people from all walks of life at the same level. So when you're on the treadmill or you're in a group exercise class or on the basketball court, you aren't beside the mayor or the senator or the CEO of this or that company. You're just working out with Steve or Joan or Sally. And so who people are at the Y is really just people. And so that kind of makes building community easier almost for us. So I've been at the Y for 23 years in Greensboro and kind of have seen how we continue to focus on building community around mental health and social wellness. The pandemic really made this clear, much clearer to me and other staff than it ever had been before. So in North Carolina, we were closed down for 6 months, which, as you can imagine, was a challenge. And we learned very quickly, like a lot of us, how to pivot our operational model. So we went from running fitness centers where people were coming in to do activities, to running classes outside, to doing food distribution, to doing remote learning. Praise Jesus, because I had a fourth grader at the time. As soon as we opened a remote learning, I was like, my child is going every day. And so but when we did that, we learned that the connection between our members was much stronger than we ever realized. So our members were coming and setting up in our parking lot with their chairs and their thermos of coffee to sit and have a conversation and engage with each other because they couldn't come in our buildings. And for us, that was just kind of amazing. And it really helped them build a connection with each other and support each other during that really difficult time. So we really kind of started to ask, how do we continue this as we move forward with our organization?
Yeah,
And
that's fascinating.
yeah,
Sorry, too
go
quick?
ahead. Nope, you're good.
Okay, yeah, that's fascinating. I love the story about them coming to your parking lot with their cups of coffee. I mean, how much more of a sign is it that your place feels inclusive and welcoming? That's amazing. So, what are the ways that you did work to continue that connection with the community and help it grow on its own?
So we've done a couple of things. One is we really try to make sure our facilities are accessible, and not just in a diverse ability standpoint. Obviously, we have things like automatic doors and ramps and um, lifts into the pool for those that are in a wheelchair. We have equipment that you can roll a wheelchair up to instead of having to get on and off of it. But we also looked at how do we make our facilities accessible for various populations. For instance, we have a very large homeless population in our downtown area, and we've really made our downtown Y a place that they feel comfortable coming. So we open our space to them as both members and community guests, and they feel welcome and included in our facility, which is really a big part of our mission, to make sure that we are open to all. And so we also look at our programming, and we make sure that we're doing programming for all ages. So we are really that birth to end of life range. So we have programming that really runs starting at 6 months. That's when we start swim lessons, and we go through well over 100. And when you walk into our Ys, you see a range of ages, genders, nationalities. You hear a range of different languages. And so most people know that we run programming for youth, but there's also a variety of program we run for adults. So we are seeing an aging population and in all of our communities across the nation. And so we want to make sure that our seniors and older adults are given a social outlet, because that's really important. So we do things that are not just exercise related, but also create connections. And this might be, we do estate planning workshops. We do working with aging parent workshops. We also do active older adult trips, or AOAs as we call them, where we take them on field trips. And so we go to shows, we go to dinner. We'll go up to the Biltmore, which is, a historic home here in North Carolina. And we find that we bring people together that then create relationships with each other. And then those groups really kind of build their own social circles. So we connect them, and then they go to lunch every day, or they go out to dinner, or some of them take trips on their own. And they really begin to build a support network with those friends, as sometimes their circle of support from family might be naturally shrinking. And so working with our seniors there. The other thing we've really looked at is making sure our facilities have these open spaces. So in the last 10 years or so, as we've renovated our buildings, we make changes to create open space to just be. So it might be that the lobby has multiple chairs, multiple tables where people can sit and check email. They can have a cup of coffee. There might be board games that we have out for people to play with each other. And it makes people realize they can come and be social and not just be there for fitness. We've really worked to create what we call that third space for people. So that space other than work and home, where they can kind of build those relationships. And it makes opportunities for people who maybe your child's in swim lessons and you're sitting in the lobby checking email, and there's another parent that's also doing that. We also see where we'll have seniors that sit out in the lobby and have coffee and build relationships and continue that social connection. And so making sure that those are as we do our facilities and redo our facilities, that we keep that in mind and that we build those spaces in lobbies and in hallways and just in different pockets throughout the building. And partnership has really been incredibly important as we've worked to improve in our community. We've looked at the things we were doing during the pandemic that were successful. And we began to think, how can we continue to run classes and connect people to each other and to the programs that we run without really expecting them to come in all the time? And so we've reached out to groups that before the pandemic would have really been considered an organization that was our competitor, to partner with them. Because when we look at it through a lens of supporting our city and community rather than just our business, these groups can sometimes be the perfect partner. And so if we're not connecting on the things or focusing on the things that we both do, but instead of looking at things we could do together, then we can work to better our community.
That's wonderful. Those really great examples of how the Y has been and still continues to bring people together for the sake of building a sense of community and relationship. And if they happen to exercise there, that's a bonus, right?
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
amazing.
Absolutely.
Can you share how the Y in the community initiative is making an impact and highlight some of maybe the most successful partnerships that have helped strengthen your outreach?
Yeah, absolutely. So RY in the community are classes that we hold in our local parks. So they're group exercise classes, usually focused around meditation or yoga, tend to be our most popular ones. And we partner with our local parks and rec to provide these classes. And it's interesting because in previous years, this would have been one of those organizations that was considered our competitor because they run youth sports, they run adult sports, they have rec centers, they have pools, which are all things that we also do. However, when we look at the size of our community and we acknowledge that we all do things in a different way and support different portions of our population within our city, we're not really competing. And so we met with them and kind of talked through gaps that we each had that the other could support. For instance, we had the wellness knowledge and we had the instructor base to run classes. Parks and Rec obviously has the parks, and then they also have a connection to a different portion of our community that isn't connected to the Y necessarily. And so we had been running these classes in our parking lots and on site during the pandemic, and that became unnecessary once we reopened and everybody wanted to be back in the air conditioning. But we felt that these classes really brought together people in our city that hadn't previously been connected, and we wanted to continue it. And so when we thought about how do we get outside of our walls, our Parks and Rec was kind of the natural person to reach out to. And they love the idea because it activates their parks in a different way within the city. And again, brings together people to their parks from us that normally would not necessarily have been there. And so we now run 2 to 3, 6 to 8 week sessions of classes each year that's free to the public in our city parks. And we've recently gotten a grant to kind of expand that. So to our local high schools, we were approached by a PTA that said, hey, we'd really love to offer something for parents and students and teachers to connect after school, primarily aimed at that time when parents are waiting for kids to get out of sports practice. Because I don't know if any of y'all have kids in sports practice, but it usually is that practice is over at 6, but really practice doesn't get over until 6:30, 6:45, 7 o'clock. And so they wanted to do something so that instead of parents just sitting in the car, instead of teachers just getting in the car and immediately leaving, and instead of students just kind of wandering around campus, there could be a structured activity. And so building a bridge between those 3 communities to run some classes there on campus. And so we're really excited to get that started. here shortly. And then our Parks and Rec partnership actually opened up the opportunity for our safety around water. So we got a grant from Pool Corps to provide safety around water classes for free. And our goal was really to reach children who normally don't have access to swim lessons and don't have the ability to get to our facilities. And so, because we had the partnership with the classes in the park, we were able to seamlessly create a partnership for running these classes in our city pools. And the great thing is that these pools are next to neighborhoods that have a population that historically don't do swim lessons or don't swim. And it's a generational cycle. And so we're able to kind of break that cycle by offering these classes in those pools, and to be able to make it easier for people to get to those lessons, which has been awesome. The other thing is working with our schools to make sure that we are helping our teens in our community. And so we are piloting a new program with teen membership as an incentive for children to make improvement. So you think about usually the kids that get rewarded are the kids that are at the top of the pile, right? So you're AB honor roll and you're all A honor roll students. But what about the kids that are really doing the best they can and they're making improvement, but they haven't gotten that high? And so we will be offering these memberships to guidance counselors and social workers in the school system to use as an incentive. So maybe students are going from D's to C's, maybe they're missing less days. And so they're going to get this as a reward and an acknowledgement that, you're seen, we understand you're making improvements, that you're really working hard. Because, not everyone gets their personal pan pizza, but we're kind of hoping that this will help them continue to strive for growth. And then I will say, like, we're not the only ones doing these activities, right? You'll find if you connect with your local Y, the stuff that Ys are doing is always amazing. I always find it great when I meet with another Y or go to another Y, that what their community needs and what they're doing to support it is really out of the box thinking. So I would recommend, if you are near a Y, reach out to them and see what they're doing to work on your community. And if you have a skill that you'd like to share with them, just reach out and say, hey, maybe you do elder law, or maybe you do estate planning, or maybe you know how to knit and you want to do a knitting class, to kind of to work to engage with your community that way.
That's amazing, Lynn. Thank you for sharing those stories. I love your comment about it's not competitive, and we all have a better impact when we work together and collaborate and find our strengths and leverage our strengths together. I love that.
Yeah,
And this
absolutely.
work around just seeing people for where they are and who they are, and finding very creative, innovative ways of reaching folks and creating those social bonds. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And if you have some questions for Lynn, please put those in the Q&A box. She'll be returning for the Q&A session that will be following Jamar's sharings. So welcome, Jamar. We're glad that you're here as well. You're going to share some interesting stories from Wilmington. We'd love to hear what was the impetus for the Wilmington Public Library to pivot from that sort of traditional, I quote, put that in quotes, library focus on books and resources to an educational, cultural, and literacy center.
Yes, well, as you aforementioned, the Wilmington Library, we were a traditional library. I mean, when I took the helm here in 2018, we had drug deals coming out of our libraries. We had
Mm.
an undercover prostitution ring. This was just not what the community envisioned, for a public library. And so with with strategic planning and robust community engagement efforts, I mean, we were able to transform, our traditional underfunded, underutilized library into a cosmopolitan living room of our city. We're literally the living room of the city of Wilmington, Delaware. So let's go on to the next slide. Um, when I took the helm here in 2018, I was working extremely, late one day, and I went and peeked outside of my office, and I saw a young man with not a young, about a 4 or 5 year old kid with wire cutters in his hand. And I'm like, what in the world is a kid this age a baby doing with wire cutters, and the kid took the wire cutters and cut the lock off of a bicycle, and the kid walked away with the bicycle, and within moments he was apprehended, by the police, by law enforcement. And so that just kind of broke me to see um, a kid, a baby in front of my library being apprehended by the police. And it was just kind of an epiphany of the library's disengagement, with the community, and the library's need to engage kids in the community in a prolific and robust manner, to offer alternatives for kids like the kid that I witnessed, engaging in that, and in that behavior. And as I looked at this kid, I saw an even broader, picture. Majority of kids, and especially Black boys. The city that I live in, Wilmington, Delaware, is 70% Black. I serve a predominantly Black working class community, and so majority of the kids, in my service area, were not reading by grade level. And kids who do not read by grade level are more vulnerable to ending up on welfare, to ending up in prison. And so we just had our work cut out for us. So what we decided that we were going to do, we were going to engage. We were going to start. We were going to start engaging with, engaging the young Black boy community. I had a vision for engaging young Black boys, and so we started bringing in New York Times bestselling authors who had a little swagger to their books. I've learned that young boys, they love books where, where the main character is flatulating or belching, or are not observing any kind of decorum. And so we started bringing in, non-traditional New York Times bestselling authors like Kwame Alexander, where these kids could see themselves in the print. We engaged about 30 barbershops in our community, and we set up pop-up libraries and barbershops all through the city of Wilmington. And we provided early literacy training to the barbers. They captured data, and the results showed that, that as kids engaged, their literacy scores increased. We wanted to marry literacy with a male presence, and we wanted to marry literacy with the swagger and the pride, and the cultural influence of the barbershop. Again, as our friend Lynn mentioned, partnerships, are everything. And so I gathered all of principals, educators, lawmakers, anybody that had anything to do with literacy together at the Wilmington Library a couple of years ago, and we had a literacy summit. And what came out of this summit was legislation passed,
Mm.
which brings the science of reading to the state of Delaware. And what this bill, makes provision for is that kids have to undergo special testing in kindergarten and first and second grade to make sure that they don't have learning disabilities or anything that can prevent them from reading by grade level. So I guess I got my start with a vision. I think community engagement has to begin with vision and with passion. And so I brought forth a vision and passion initially, for young Black boys, because that's where the dire need was in my community. Next slide. The key about community engagement is that you must meet a need that nobody else in your community is meeting. I mean, what I have strived to do as a library leader, to increase the visibility and viability of our library, and to engage the community in a unique way, is have a brand that is replete with novelty. And as we canvassed the community, we canvassed our community to find out exactly what the community needs were. And what we discovered was that many of our constituents have never even left the state of Delaware, the city limits of Wilmington. So we decided that our mission would be to bring the world to Wilmington, since our constituents, for reasons unbeknownst to us, were not leaving the city limits. So we found a need, and we are meeting it accordingly, and that's what we can attribute our success to. So go back I think you skipped. Go back.
Yeah.
Go back to the other one.
I, oh, sorry, am I one? Ahead.
Yep.
There we go.
So what we decided to do, we decided to bring the world to Wilmington, Delaware. And so we started bringing in as many prolific, especially, since we're serving a Black community, Black cultural influencers as possible. We've hosted, Debbie Allen, Angela Davis. We've had LeVar Burton here. We've had Dolly Parton, Felicia Rashad, Dennis Rodman. We reunited the cast of A Different World. The flyer there with the Kims of Comedy, that was an event I curated myself, and the event had so much traction here that the Kims took the short in the road and they booked a Coliseum in South Florida and sold tickets. I'm still waiting for our cut. Um, but we have decided we've infused our work with cultural competency. What is something that working class Black people would respond well to, and we just decided that we would engage them um, by making our library more cosmopolitan and bringing in cultural influencers. On top of the prodigious events that we offer with all the celebrity influencers. I mean, we people have their weddings here, their birthday parties, their yeah, their weddings, and so if the marriages don't work out, it's not our fault. Um, but baby showers, birthday parties, we've even had memorial services here, and we don't charge our community anything. And so the good part about it is that brings in having very liberal meeting usage policies. It brings in people who are non-traditional library users, and what it does is that it just gives them a memory at the library, so that if there's ever a referendum or a bond that we're trying to get passed, I mean, even though they may not come in and check out books or use the library, they'll have a memory. Such and such got married, at the Wilmington Library. The Wilmington Library, serves, a purpose. And so, as nonprofit organizations, we have to also figure out how to take our community engagement and leverage it to developing more advocacy for our respective institutions, so that we can generate, more attention and more revenue. Next slide.
Yeah, Jamar, this is really interesting, and I'm so appreciative of these very specific stories. I think the whole effort you've done around literacy, obviously, when you can read and you're reading about so many different things, it expands your mind. It gives you things to talk to other people about. This barbershop initiative is amazing because now young boys can be talking to their barbers about what they're reading, and that expands the conversation. So I
Yes.
really do appreciate these very specific examples and would love to hear more about how you're thinking about creating that sense of community and social connections for your residents.
Yes, and yeah, thank you for that. And also what our events have done is that, like, with
Yes.
having people, like, one thing about it, we're living in a climate where, people are more divided than ever, more polarized than ever. And, bringing in one thing that pop culture, the arts and the humanities does is that it creates social cohesion. It builds a bridge. It brings people together, because it's one thing that we all kind of have in common. I mean, when we hosted LeVar Burton, I mean, people were, the stars at Star Trek or Star Wars. I get the two confused, but they're science geeks of all races, of all ages, of all socioeconomic statuses, and I haven't met anybody who dislikes Dolly Parton. And so, and so what it does is that we're able to, the library is a venue to where, when we have these events and we engage the community, that we're bringing in people of different races, socioeconomic statuses, and different parts of the city. So by community engagement, we're building a bridge and we're creating social cohesion. And I think it's these type of things, if they're done a lot on a micro level, I think that it will eventually have some type of um, um, macro impact that will help us, restore civility and sustain our democracy. Um,
Mhm.
but one of our largest events was we reunited the cast of A Different World, and again, we serve a predominantly Black community, and so A Different World is a cultural phenomenon. Many young Black people were encouraged to, to matriculate to college by watching the show. They just gave the college experience that they made it real to them. And that's what that's what the arts and the humanities do. And so we reunited the cast here of A Different World. And we had people that traveled from all over the country to attend this library event.
Mm.
We had lines that went blocks. And so but the thing that I want to hone in on is the impact that the event made on our community. If you see the image there, there's a young lady hugging Don Lewis. She had gotten up during the audience Q&A session, and she just expressed how she had struggled with mental health issues, and how one of the characters of the show inspired her to apply to college, in spite of her mental health struggles. And unbeknownst to her, that character, that actress there, has a foundation that awards a scholarship. So she awarded that young woman a scholarship, right there on the spot at a library. So that woman got a scholarship by attending a library event. Um, another young lady, that lives in the community, we allowed her to give one of the cast members a jumpsuit that she had designed, and one of the cast members modeled it on Instagram. And this young woman got a call from Los Angeles and was invited there to do fashion design work. And so this is another person who's never left the city limits of Wilmington, but got an opportunity in Los Angeles, one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the United States. And this was by virtue of making a connection at a community event at a public library. Next slide. Yeah, and so what we strive to do, when we engage our community, we strive to create transformative life experiences. We've hosted, there's actor Lorenz Tate, and there's actor Omari Hardwick. And as a library director, I mean, having those two actors here, that was the first time I've ever seen hundreds of women lose their minds in the library. The library is a place where you're supposed to gain your mind, but they lost their minds in the library. And so we hosted Misty Copeland, and photographed there a couple of the dancers. And one of the young ladies there, about 5 years ago, she came into the library and she did a ballerina pose and took a picture with the book of Misty Copeland. That was her icon. This is 5 years ago. And she just literally wept when she had the opportunity to meet Misty Copeland in person. And the ballerina industry, I mean, there's just only been a handful of Black women who have who have penetrated into that, into that field. And so having a community that's majority Black for these young Black girls to see this icon that they've looked up to, it created a transformative life experience for them. So we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, Jamar, this is so incredibly inspiring to hear these stories, and how just these events and these connection points at the library really help engage community members. And can you say a bit more about how community members really have helped in this transformation process?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, one thing that we do, just to go back to community partners, we partner with our local United Way. We do toy drives in the winter. We do coat and shoes and mitten giveaways. We actually have two nonprofit organizations located inside of our library. One is Harper Hearts, and they have a formula and diaper dispensary to needy families. We have literacy. We have a nonprofit literacy institution here that helps adults who do not know how to read. And so one thing that we've done in terms of being a community center is that and Lynn had mentioned this, is that we're not in competition with anybody. And we've just decided, we did an asset map, which I encourage every institution to do an asset map of all of the nonprofit organizations in your area and see what they're doing. And that's what we did. And we decided that we were not going to duplicate their efforts. We were just going to support them. And we were going to serve, since we're a library, we were going to just serve as their broker. So if these institutions needed a pipeline, we would, a pipeline to the community, that we would provide that. And that's what we've done by housing these, these nonprofits. The community has, in terms of partnering, a lot of our large, library events now, since that's our brand now, they will partner with us and they will help us with the honorarium. They will volunteer for the setup and you know and breakdown. But I think that brokering other nonprofit organizations is definitely going to be critical, except in light of what is going on at the federal level, because I think in another year or two, you're going to find many nonprofit organizations that are going to that are going to be even more underfunded than they are now, and some of them are going to be they're going to see a demise. And so I think it's critical that we build coalitions and support one another um, so that we can stay vital and stay alive during this potential season of drought. Um, so I hope I answered that question. But yeah, we make community connections, and one thing that our library events have done is that, they have, there's just been some utilitarianism there. Um, since we have hosted so many prolific people, we've engaged the community in such a robust manner. We now have people reaching out to us to come visit our library. And the rapper Common was on a book tour, and he reached out to us and said he was passing through Wilmington, Delaware, and he's seen all the great things that we've done, and he wanted to make a stop here on his book tour. And so that's the iconic rapper Common at the Wilmington Library. And if you look at the photos, those are drone views. I mean, we have events that lines that go blocks away. So we now have we now have brand equity in our institution. And one thing that brand equity has done for us, and the utilitarianism of our brand equity, is that it's helped distinguish some of these colossal threats to intellectual freedom. We haven't had we haven't had any instances of people trying to ban books here, but we've hosted controversial figures like Angela Davis, Dennis Rodman, Michael Vick, and we've had people that have tried to suppress those voices, and they've gone to social media saying that these people shouldn't have a voice in the library. But since we have so much brand equity in the community, and we've engaged the community so well, um, as a library director, I've never had to combat these threats. The community has come to my defense and has silenced these people. And so what you want as a nonprofit organization and as a community builder, you want to build a militia of people that will serve as advocates, who will have your back, in times of threat, in times of financial duress.
Mhm. Yeah, Jamar, thank you for that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really clear that, you listened to the needs of the community, responded to those needs in ways big and small that have, as you say, built trust with your institution, with your organization, have people have good memories there, and they, have good,
Yeah.
they're associating, their own sort of sense of belonging with that building and and the people in it and the events and the partnerships that you've made. And so clearly, that really does help create the stronger bonds. We're going to go ahead and move to our Q&A.
All righty.
So if you have a question for either Jamar or Lynn, please put that in the Q&A. And then we will, segue to that. Joanne, how is it looking there?
It's very busy, so I am appreciating a decent chunk of time to address as many questions as we can. Just want to let folks know we have more questions than we can address during this live webinar, but don't forget we have the post webinar discussion group. So if your question's not addressed here, please join us there. I want to start Lynn and Jamar with a question that from Ivory, which I think is really important and good to ground us in this topic of community hubs and strengthening social connections in communities. And so Ivory wondered, do you have a referral system in place or some kind of process in place where um, if you identify people who come to your spaces who are lonely or have mental health needs, that you can refer them to get some help? And it looks like Jamal just dropped off. So, Lynn, I'm going to ask you to field this one first.
We do not have an official referral program. We do at a couple of our sites have on-site nurses through our local hospital system who can sometimes help us identify that. I will say that is a goal of ours, is to work on mental health. We've really focused on providing mental health support for our staff first. So we do have an on-site person for staff to be able to talk to, but don't have an official one for members at this point. We do have some, local agencies that we can kind of give them a list of, hey, here are some other opportunities for you, but not any sort of official referral system.
Okay. And sticking with you, Lynn, folks were working on getting Jamar back into the webinar, and appreciating, Lynn. We have plenty of questions for you, Lynn, because you just really helped to get people thinking and motivate them about what kind of partnerships might look like with their whys. And speaking of partnerships, you spoke about how important it is to do that, to have, a broader reach outside of the walls, so to speak. And so, sort of two questions in one. How do you decide which organizations to partner with? And in terms of the partnerships that you establish, are they more informal, or do you have formal agreements in place? What does that look like?
So it's a little bit of all in yes, and so it really depends on what the need is and who we have a connection with. Sometimes it is happenstance. Like, I will meet somebody at an event and they work with a business and I go, that would be a good person for us to partner with. Sometimes it is just different staff that have connections or members that come to us and say, hey, I think this would be a great partnership with the Y. And could we do something together? So there's not like a formal application process. For us, it's really as a need comes up, we try to figure out how can we meet that need and who would be the best person to talk to. And then for the agreements, again, it's the same. Sometimes it's an informal agreement, sometimes it's formal. It just depends on what we're doing and whether or not what we're doing has like a financial component. If we're running a program that we're charging fees for, we're going to have a more formal agreement to determine how we split all that kind of stuff up. But it really just depends on what the partnership looks like as to how formal we get with those.
Yeah, and that's really realistic, Lynn, and that's what you want in communities, right? Is to be emergent and responsive to what community needs are bubbling up. So we're going to give Lynn a bit of a rest, but we might come back to you, Lynn, so don't go anywhere. And Jamar, you clearly have inspired people to think very differently about libraries, as Lynn has done with WISE and other types of community centers. And so one by far resounding question was, how do you fund bringing in these influencers into a community? Can you help make that seem more doable for the people in our audience?
By any means necessary, in a nutshell, by any means necessary, I use a variety of methods. The first thing, especially with the libraries, that I capitalize, upon any of these influencers or famous people that have books out, because 90% of our guests are people that have written a book. So it's a literacy component. The literacy component is important, and one thing that you can do is that you can negotiate with the publisher, and you can agree to buy a mass amount of copies of the person's book, and they will put you on their book tour, and you end up reselling most of those books, so you'll recoup your money. So it's like getting a famous person at your library for free. So I do as much of mass book buying and working with publishers as possible. I try to avail myself to the altruism of many of these influencers, because many of them have a heart for urban communities, and so I'm able to reach out to their agents and get them here at half of what their honorarium costs. And I'm in Delaware, so I'm between I capitalize on proximity and geography, because I'm in Delaware, and Delaware is between Washington D.C. and New York City, and so all these people are usually at some point they interface with New York City or DC. So I will many times say, hey, you're going to be in New York City, you know, in this state, you know, if we send a car service to you, could you stop by the Wilmington Library and just meet our community for an hour? And many of these people are very amenable to that. We have a library foundation that supplements our programming budget. I write grants, and again, since we have brand equity now, we now have partners and people who will come and who will co-host events for us, and they'll split the costs.
Yeah, that's great. Very good insider tips, folks. So find the win for these influencers to come to you, right?
Right.
Um, and I don't know, Lisa, if we have time for one more question.
Yeah, we can do one more.
Okay. So this one is really again kind of going back to the focus on how do your hubs create an impact that has some sustainable footprints, so to speak, in the community. Do either of you monitor the impact and connections beyond the event or beyond the program?
Well, you know, we have a plethora of summer literacy initiatives and programming. And so what we do is that we capture data of kids who participate in summer reading initiatives and summer reading programming. And we have, you know, we've drawn a conclusion that kids who participate in summer programming at the library have better grades and have better test scores.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we've also, since we've brought the science of reading to our state, we've gotten funding for kids to have private, you know, reading tutors. And so those kids who participate in our tutorial programs and the schools that come to the library weekly for author visits and for, you know, for story hour and things of that nature, those schools have, those classes have higher test scores than their peers. So we do capture data in that regard. Also with our events, I have a relationship with Wilmington, the Greater Wilmington Visitors Bureau, and what they have figured out is that what library events have done is it has enhanced the economic vitality of our city, because
Mm-hmm.
with us having a national profile now, when people come to our library events from out of state, they book hotel rooms, they patronize the restaurants here, and so the Greater Wilmington Visitors Bureau have noticed that you know, library events have enhanced the economic vitality of downtown Wilmington.
That's great. Lynn, do you want to jump here on tracking
Yeah, so we
impact?
with some of our stuff, like obviously our Why in the Community classes, we do a lot of tracking around numbers, attendance, right? So are we seeing an increase in attendance? Are we seeing repeat attendance? So we track, you know, does somebody come to all 6 sessions, or do they only come the first week or the second week? Obviously with our swim lessons, we're, you know, working to get those kids into second rounds, so they get a free set, and do they enroll in a second round of lessons. With our teen membership, we're looking at that will be actually tracked by the counselors, so they would be the ones to tell us, hey, we're seeing students strive in these areas to be able to get these memberships, so we're seeing them work to improve on their test scores, attendance, etc. Are kind of the ways that we track some of that stuff.
Wonderful. Well, we're out of time during this
Mhm.
Q&A webinar portion, but remember, folks, join us in the discussion group where we'll have Lynn and Jamar joining us there, and we can hopefully answer more questions and hear from the rest of you what's happening with community hubs in your area.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Joanne, for the Q&A, and thank you everybody for staying with us through this whole conversation. We are excited about our next Socially Connected Communities Network webinar and discussion group. The title is Bridging and Belonging to Strengthen Social Connections. So Becky will be putting the link to the chat, link to the webinar to register for that webinar in chat. So you can register now if you like, and we'll also be sending some reminders out. And remember to mark your calendar on that day as well to have the option of joining the discussion group from 4 to 5 p.m. Staying up to date with all future webinars and all of our various resources that we post. In the near future, we will be sending you directly via email the links to the recording, slides, and a resource guide from today's webinar. If you're interested in any of them that you missed or want to ever go back and look at some from previous times, our website is the place to find that. And Becky will put that in chat as well. We appreciate you giving us just a little bit of feedback here. So a couple more items here before we segue into discussion group. First is this poll for our learning and quality improvement interests. If you could just quickly answer the poll, did you learn, did you gain something of value by attending this webinar? That's super helpful. We will share this as well with our guest presenters. And if you answered yes, we also would love to hear what it is that you gained, and you can share with us as well anything that could have made your experience better. So we'll give this just a minute or so. And then if you're staying on with us for the discussion group, we will give you the link to that so that you can join us over there. But in the meantime, we appreciate you providing just a little bit of feedback here and letting us know. We're getting a resounding yes from a good number of folks that are responding to the survey. Please continue to respond and share anything specific that you gained or anything that could have made your experience better in the website. We'll close the poll in about 10 seconds so we can give you that link. Okay. 97% yes, that's a wonderful score. Thank you so much. Let me move to the next slide. All right, so we're going to keep this momentum around learning and engagement going, and we're hoping that you will join us now in the post-webinar discussion group. This will be in a meeting format, so we need a new link, so you can disengage from today's webinar and go ahead and engage in the discussion group. For those of you who are unable to join us, thank you so much for being here today. We hope to stay in touch with you very closely. Here are 3 ways that you can do that. If you want to use your phone and grab one of these QR codes to stay connected with us, we would appreciate that. And without further ado, we will go to the discussion group. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful day.